CDA, Coeur d'Alene's Urban Renewal Agency, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please remove their hat and stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's time for public comment. Anybody wish to come forward with some public comment? Now is the time to do so. Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to review and approve the minutes from the January board.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 17th board meeting.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any corrections, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next will be the opening of the sealed bids for the North Park Drive lots. So I'm going to ask Tony if he wouldn't mind just to review the process for selling these lots from the time we declared them surplus up till now.
Well, so last fall, the board did decide to declare these lots surplus, and we went through the subdivision platting process through the city and got the lots all established, all 10 lots. And then in December, we posted a sealed bid package on the website and started advertising for bid opening that closed at 3 p.m. today. We listed lots on Zillow to kind of get more exposure. We put a sign on site to kind of share the information and shared it with quite a few individuals. And now we come to the point of the process where we open sealed bids. We received sealed bids on 4 of the lots, and 6 lots did not receive any bids at all. So Chairman Hoskins and Legal Counsel Quaid will open the lot, or open the bids. I'll go up and type the information on the screen so everybody can see what's going on. You have an agenda? I got one over here, Scott.
I'll just take them in no particular order, just whatever's on top here. It's a bid for lot 4.
Charles Keith Hawkins. H.A. And the bid amount is $236,100.
236,100.
Lot 4.
Lot 4.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a bid for lot number 7.
Also, Charles Hawkins, $241,000.
Lot 7.
241?
241,100, excuse me.
This is the bid for lot 8. It's kind of like Christmas presents.
Elizabeth Larson, $236,500.
You're too fast for me here. Larson.
Larson.
And that was for lot 8?
Lot 8.
How much?
$236,500.
236,500?
This is for lot 10.
Donald Mullen, Mullen, and the bid is for $227,500.
1 second, Danielle. Mullen? Mm-hmm. 1 E, okay. Lot 10,
Yes, sir.
and how much again?
$227,500. Is that another bid on lot 10?
Yes.
So just to note too, Donald Mullins has an escalation clause because we're about to open another bid
For lot 10?
for lot 10.
Okay.
Do we open this one first then? or-
Go ahead, yeah. This is from Jack Fraser, Fraser, and Cheryl Fraser. For $221,999.
221999?
So it also has an escalation clause up to $226,999. Mr. Mullins' escalation clause goes in $1,000 increments up to a cap of $300,100.
Well, if you look at Mr. Mullins, it looks like it exceeds the cap that you just
Okay.
listed for two,
Okay.
226?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
999, right, was the cap, so that's,
So his original bid exceeds that of $227,500.
Okay.
Okay.
the last one here is for lot 7.
It is from Chad Cooper, Cooper, with a bid of $198,500.
That was for lot 7,
Yes.
198.5. I think that's it, right?
Correct.
So you see, we have 6 lots that were not bid upon. So the discussion at this time is to what to do next. There's some different options for the board. One option is just to go ahead and bundle the remaining lots into just kind of, one grouping and seek to divest of them through another sealed bid process to one buyer. Or you could look into engaging a realtor to divest of the remaining lots via a typical realtor relationship.
Should we start by making a motion or considering the approval of these bids and
Okay.
then have that discussion?
I'd make a motion to accept the bids as read, the winning bids as read for lots 4, 7, 8, and 10.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Well, just question, so assume that they're all responsive bids, that they've got the appropriate deposits or whatever
They
we
do.
had set up, so.
Yes,
okay.
sir. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries for those 4 lots. Now let's have some dialogue about the 6 remaining lots.
Whoever bought them.
Hey, we could start a bid, right? Auction? You want to be the auctioneer? Brad?
I'll just say something to start things out here. I think we've got a real viable commodity here that's in demand with these lots in the foregrounds. It's probably one of the most prime neighborhoods in town. So I don't know if I would be for bundling these. I think if you bundle them, it'll be the same thing we talked about a few months ago. You get a wholesale price from a developer. It's a quick way to get rid of them if we're trying to maximize the return for the taxpayers. I would think we probably sell them individually one way or the other. And I think we have the option now to amend the prices, don't we, since we've gone through a bid process? Pretty much do anything we want. Spring is coming. I mean, it's prime time to be selling lots, so. That's my 2 cents, whether we use a realtor or some other way. I would be in favor of retailing those lots for top dollar.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor?
actually, I have a question for Brad. Brad, can you put these out there without specifically listing them with a realtor, but get it known to the real estate community that a commission will be paid on that without specifically hiring someone, but knows that if if a realtor brings a buyer for those lots, that they're going to get paid out of the deal?
Yeah, you could just kind of have an open listing concept, and we could draft a letter and send it off to all the real estate companies in the MLS and offer however much we decide on for compensation, for an acceptable offer.
Typically like a 1% fee, is that what realtors?
Sometimes that's what they get when they work with real cheap sellers.
Oh.
Usually they get around to 3%. I guess it could be whatever you want it to be.
Is it standard 6? Is that kind of the standard listing? 5 or 6?
6 is what you normally see, yeah. I mean, of course, the standard thing here is commissions aren't set by law and they're freely negotiable, but most of the time you see 6% commissions. So that's one way to do it. We could try that for a little while if you don't want to actually list them with somebody and, see how that goes. We just have to kind of think through how to get the word out and market those. Sometimes REO companies will do it that way, and they'll have a sign on the properties that say, contact your broker, cooperation offered, something like that. We can send a letter out to the real estate companies and try that route. And if anything, I'd say these prices are probably on the low end as far as what we'd accept on them. That's another debate, I guess, as to what we'll ask for them.
Dan?
Well, without being in the real estate business, but just, it shows to me, I mean, I see that, yeah, we've got some value more than what we were asking for minimum bids. We didn't get something on all of them, but we got more than one on some of them. If we're not in a hurry, it would seem to me that, just kind of repeating the process we went, which will now get us into the spring market versus the kind of the dead of winter and holiday time. And then if that didn't work, maybe go to another route. But again, that's if we're in no hurry. What was the timeline on this kind of from start to today? About 3 months elapsed?
2-3 months.
Yeah, we've been in this business for about 3 months now.
I'd say 2 things. One is if we do list these individually, and when I say list, that could be a lot of different things. I'll just use that for lack of a better term. We list these on the market individually. There's nothing to say that an investor or developer can't come to us and then say, hey, I'll offer you this much money for all these lots. They can still make us an offer. We can consider any and all offers at this point in time, from what I understand from council. So that's still an option. And I think, I'd probably list these up at a little bit higher at what market value is for these, for something that's as prime as what these are right now. And I wouldn't be too worried that we didn't have offers on all of these. It's, it's the winter time and these are expensive lots. I mean, if these were $50,000 or $60,000 lots down in that price range, we'd have people stampeding for them. But, there's not as many buyers in this price range, but the buyers will be here. And it's not uncommon in a subdivision where you'll have some lots that don't sell as fast as the others, or some houses and so forth. And then But, you know, all of a sudden, bam, you know, you get 2 offers in on one day and, you know, 3 offers a couple days later. So, you know, I think these will move. I don't think that's a problem, the fact that we didn't get everything sold today.
I think we're already down that road of selling them individually. It'd be a lot easier to do it that way, going down this road, than going backward and selling them as a bundle anymore.
I think too with the location, you've got spots, so you'll have 2 and then a lot and
They're
then
not contiguous.
2 empty, yeah, it would be a miracle if they were contiguous. But I think it's hard to bundle. It would be challenging for us to bundle it that way, but for someone to come in and want to put 3 lots together or buy 3 lots all at the same time, that would be, or 2 lots, that would be their choice.
Sure.
I would think staying with individual, I would agree with that at this point. What's your reasoning for not wanting to list it with an agent?
Just so we give everybody the opportunity, I mean, it's always tough in our business to pick a specific one to deal with.
I thought that was.
Just to keep it open. Maybe this question for Danielle. So we had 2 bidders that were not the winning bids, but at this point, there's other lots available. We could, in essence, go back to those folks and say, you know, we do have others available. Are you interested in any of the others too?
Absolutely. Yeah, you, at this point, pursuant to the statute, the municipal statute for surplus property, you can sell them how you see fit in the best interest of the public.
A question on, for the folks who are now going to buy these lots, how quickly could we see something coming up out of the ground?
Being the ones that have bought the lots?
Yeah.
As soon as they can draw plans and go through the city building department.
So, and will that potentially make any impact on other potential buyers? I mean, just to see, that's going up and.
I think it makes a lot of impact, and like I said, spring is coming. And I don't know how many times it's pretty typical, you'll see a subdivision, there's nothing but dirt out there. Then 1 or 2 houses start, and all of a sudden there's half a dozen houses go, and then bam, like there's like all this synergy and people see things going on, and so then it's on a roll as soon as it gets started.
Yeah, I think there were they're all ready to go. Utilities are right there at the property line, and so as soon as they get their plans approved and their building permit and stuff, I think they can start. Line up a builder, isn't that right? Wouldn't that be right, Phil?
You could, before we do anything with those, you could give the people that didn't win the bid a shot at buying another lot if they want to before we, you know, do whatever we decide to do. That's just throwing that out there.
I see some head shaking out there, so I think that is.
So we might have a couple of more lots gone anyway.
Kind of like in an auction where the second bidder can match the price or something.
But I think the bid shows that we're probably a little bit under what market's going to be this spring for these lots.
One thing to think about, if we sell them individually, that's going to make somebody extremely busy. Accepting all those, counter offers, paperwork to the title companies. I mean, that's 6 times who's going to volunteer to do that?
Depends if you get a couple of these sold here right out of the chute or not. I mean, I don't know what Tony, I shouldn't say I don't know what Tony's workload is. I know Tony's workload is heavy. But if we want to try and go the route like Steve suggested of not listing them and putting out an open letter, I mean, I guess we could kind of get things sort of laid out and synchronized here with Tony and our legal counsel so that it's kind of streamlined and try to minimize the workload.
So regarding process, how would we make this an efficient process? Can the board grant authority to certain board members to perform negotiations and accept bids to bring them back for the board for approval? How do we make this functional?
The board could delegate to board members or delegate to you the authority to negotiate with purchasers, but they would have to bring the contracts back to the board. So we'd either have to have special meetings to approve contracts or wait until next month.
Can a deal be struck, though, prior to a board approval?
We can't sign the purchase and sale, you can't sign the contract until you have board approval.
Is there a way to give authorization to somebody, the president or someone, if they're at asking price, that they'd be authorized to sign the purchase agreement if they're not under asking price without having to wait until the meeting comes back? I mean, I've seen organizations where someone's delegated to have the authority to do that.
You can't really delegate the authority to contract, but I mean, if it's at asking price, I think you can give them pretty good assurance that the board's gonna accept, unless there's other contingencies, I can't see the board not accepting.
What is
that.
the asking price going to be?
Well,
I mean,
you
we
guys-
haven't set that
You would
yet.
have to set that.
I mean, right
We'll
now,
have to
we're,
set that, yeah.
so if we're gonna list them, we're $75,000 out on fees, on commissions. So we're gonna have to, factor that in. So we need to probably set listing or asking prices on all 6 of these lots.
And then to delegate who handles offers.
Well, they're trying to avoid that. Pardon me?
And then designate somebody to do it.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna be a lot of work. A lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do whatever I can to help Tony with this.
But again, it seems like we've got kind of two categories. We may have potential for two that, could be sold up for the kind of backup bidders. Are we able to handle that as one, kind of immediate process and then see what's left over for the rest, or do they all have to go through?
Well, I mean, you can sell them any way you want. Like I said, now that we went through the public bid process on all of them. So you could go back to the two bidders, the two low bidders on those 2 lots and, give them first opportunity to make a bid on the new lots. You could choose to list them, you could choose to go through this process again, where you just do another auction, maybe lower the prices a little bit as the minimum, because we set the minimum at the appraised price. So you could set the minimum a little lower than that, go through this process again. You wouldn't have to have the public hearing and all those kinds of things, but you could still just say, we're gonna open bids on, the next meeting or the April meeting, or you could package them all together. There's a lot of different alternatives.
And is it a very big deal to call for a special meeting? Because it seems to me that, if I would certainly be willing to meet at a separate time for, maybe we'd only have a half-hour meeting where that's all we're dealing with, so.
Well, and you could also do it the statute allows you to do that by teleconference. So if we get one board member at the
Oh.
posted site, everybody else can dial in. So you don't all have to physically
Because
show
I
up to have
want
a
to be
special.
responsive. If we've got one or two that might potentially, I don't want to hold them up. So.
Right. Well, and I would suggest that we ask people to use the same format of documents that we've already drafted. So the 4 that we have, we proposed a purchase and sale agreement and a deed. So I would just say we would ask them to use that same structure, which would hold down the work a lot for Tony and I, if you're selling them individually, Tony and me. Whether or not we use a realtor or not, because we don't have to use the real estate forms, even if we do use a realtor.
Doing it this very similar process, we could post the bids.
You're asking me?
Have sealed bids again and open them here, and we wouldn't need a realtor.
Right. But then you don't get them on the MLS.
I'll answer you when
So I'm going to
Deanna's
kind of
done.
follow up with Dan's question. Can we give an opportunity to the 2 losing bidders first shot at the others? We can do that. They can have an opportunity to change their bid to a different lot,
Yes.
and then we offer the bids to sell the rest of them in the same process that we've done.
How quickly could we, do that? I'm sorry.
Well, it's not an agenda item, but
I don't know.
Guess that's a
This
legal
is new
question.
ground.
How quick can we do it?
public comments coming up.
Now, personally,
Take a recess and
I mean, I wouldn't have, I think the fair thing to do, I wouldn't lower the price, but I think the fair thing to do is and I'd be fine if the 2 losers wanted to make a bid at or above what our minimum prices are right now. Then that'd probably be the fair thing to do. But then after that, I think it's a whole new game as far as where we set the prices. And the Real Estate Commission has specific criteria about agency and representation in an offer, but having said that, I see a lot of cases where there's auction companies and REO companies, and a lot of them demand the use of their own forms. And so, I see a lot of things go that aren't on the Realtor forms. Sometimes, depending what office is involved, they'll attach an addendum if the broker's concerned about some specific state language. But anyway, I think we can do anything we want to use.
Dave?
Mr. Chairman, I was thinking that when we were talking about, I wasn't going to call them losers, I was going to call them second-place finishers. But if we would offer those folks and give Tony and Danielle the authority to work with those folks to see if they want any of the other lots available at the asking prices, I'm just assuming that. And then if those two take some lots that don't have a bid on, you have 4 lots left, then from there, we would go out, and I don't know if we want to change the price, because if we change the price, we're just guessing here, right? If we were to set a price today, I don't know if we go back and we ask, was it Stan Moe that had appraised these? If these results affect his appraisal, maybe he could give a quick opinion on that the other 4 lots have a different value, or he may stick with the value. Then let's say that Stan takes a look at the bids we have. He wants to stick with his value. He feels that those are good, that we could offer those for sales at those prices as a net. So the agency would net that price. For example, Lot 1, you could net 209, which means that whoever is the purchaser, if they're dealing with a realtor, their commission goes on top of that. So I'm just throwing out that strategy to see if that's something that may work.
One suggestion, since we're not in a time crunch here, maybe there's a small ad hoc committee that works to kind of get a process together and brings that back to the March board meeting for the lots that are unsold, giving the second place finishers a chance to maybe thin the lots from 6 to 4. And then maybe the board could then have a better feel about how they want to proceed, instead of trying to do something right now.
Yeah, this is tough to do it right now. And if March is still getting into prime time, so that's fine with me if it's fine with everyone else. I was just going to say too, there's a lot for sale down at 16th and Mullen right now. It's a 50-foot lot for $220,000. It hasn't sold as far as I know, but I don't know the legalities on how we set our price. But just if I was dealing with my own lots or with a private owner, I would be marking the prices up on these with spring coming and how prime these lots are. You know, maybe give the 2 second runner-up finishers a shot at the, if they want to buy one at or above the current asking price. But I think,
can I ask for a volunteer for a little ad hoc committee to kind of work with me to kind of come back with a process for the March for unsold lots? I'll reach out to the second place bidders to see if they want to offer a bid for the minimum asking on remaining lots, and if they do, I'll communicate that, and then if not, then we'll have 6 lots to deal with.
or 5.
Or 5.
Somewhere in between. If you want me, I'll help you with it.
So I see Brad's hand.
I'll join. Well,
Jim? Scott, you said? Okay. Okay.
That'd be easy.
So then I think we should take a motion to authorize you to offer the remaining lots to the 2 second place bidders at the offering prices that was included in the bid packet as a minimum for the applicable lot, and then authorize us to negotiate the purchase and sale agreement with them to the extent they approve, the same as we would with the winning bidders.
So moved.
Second.
Let me catch you up.
Sorry, Tony.
To authorize me and you, or just me?
You, I mean,
Okay, authorize it, okay. To work with second bidders. On sales, lots, okay, and then,
at the prices in the bid form.
okay. Okay,
And negotiate a purchase and sale agreement with them pursuant to the bid form as well.
okay. And that was motion by Commissioner Whitmire.
Yep, seconded by Olivia, at least one of them.
Would it be, this is in a, kind of like a counter offer, would it be, have any point to put, like, say, a timeline of, 10 days for them to respond or something, or should we just leave it open with them in our committee, but for the next meeting? Also, I mean, I'm certainly willing to meet in between if needed, but,
I'd support a timeline. I think they need to do it fairly quick if they're gonna do it.
and so that they know, too. Yeah.
I'd like to know where we are by the time we have our ad hoc meeting, so I think they should decide in the next week or so. They should be able to do that.
Yeah, I'd say a week, yeah.
So decide within a
Okay.
week.
Within
Okay.
5 business days.
Yeah, I'm okay with either a week or
Starting
5
tomorrow,
business
yeah.
days.
And then we give winning bidders 21 days to enter into the purchase and sale agreement. So I would say they would be required to make the same deposit that they're required to make under the bid documents. And you give them a week to do that, or however many business days. And then 21 days from that deposit, they would have to enter in the purchase and sale agreement and then close 30 days following that, which is the process that.
It's basically the same
Yeah,
process if they
same
just want to
process
choose
is in the
another
bid
lot.
form.
Right.
Yes.
Should have sent
Yeah,
it to the
that's
same
simple.
thing. For these, yeah.
Okay,
We're using
any
the same
further
check.
discussion?
So let me just sum up.
Who's gonna read it?
So I have a motion to move forward with the second place bidders to see if they're interested in another lot. And after that process, we'll get the ad hoc committee together to kind of form a discussion around how to deal with the remaining lots at the March board meeting, whether you want to kind of leave it the same price, if you want to, kind of get updated appraisals or set a price as we go into the spring market. About
And
right?
this- And it authorizes you, the motion also authorizes you to do so, correct?
To
Work with them.
To work
work
with
with the
these.
two bidders.
Negotiate
Right,
those.
okay.
With
Yes.
legal counsel.
Okay.
Quick question. What, you said they have 21 days to enter into a contract? How long do
So-
they have?
So from today, we just gave ourselves, we gave a little bit of extra time because we thought we could be dealing with up to 10 of them. We didn't want us to be holding
Okay,
that
how long do they
precedent.
have to close escrow?
30 days.
21 days and 30 days?
So it's about 50-day total,
Oh, 21 plus,
30. Yeah. Which is, I think about what I've been hearing is 45 days is kind of what it's taking anyway.
well, I mean, for a house with VA financing or something, it is maybe. I don't know about lots, but it's fine. All I was going to say is, once we have closings, we've got some pretty good comparable sales. Here, so I just wondered how soon we had closings, so that's fine.
Certainly could be sooner.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Everybody's aware of what the motion is in detail? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Wow.
Mr. Chairman, for the people, the winning bidders, then the next step is that Tony will be back in contact and Danielle to,
Correct.
you've got all their contact information and you'll arrange for all the paperwork.
Yes.
Yes.
To let them know that they're the winning bidder and start the process.
Hand those back to me.
Yes, I will.
I'm just going to save the file if you want to move on, Chairman.
Okay. We're rolling into committee reports now. Finance Committee, Commissioner Arman.
Okay, well, it's a pretty busy time this time of year for finance. So let's start out with the financial statements for the Lake and River District. Starting out with the balance sheet of the Lake District. The Lake District experienced a $2,214,307 increase in cash assets from December month end. Receivables, taxes were decreased of $21,249, which was an audit adjustment. And due from the River District, $29,870, which was also an audit adjustment for expenses. Fixed assets, construction in progress. Construction in progress downtown parking garage, $271,189, another audit adjustment. And construction in progress of Park Drive lots, $45,876, also an audit adjustment. All other fixed assets and values were unchanged. Other assets, the Lake District 2016 Series Note Reserve Account had $27 earned interest on account balance for the month of December. All other assets and values were unchanged. The liabilities and fund balances, the mortgage and notes payable line item decreased to $381,076 for January, which reflects a standard month of debt service plus an audit adjustment of $375,000, reflecting the payoff of the 214 3rd Street loan. All other liability parameters are either unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% credit due to the arts line item due to the county increment check received in January. The Lake District P&L, the Lake District received $2,258,013 in tax increment revenue from the county in January. Agency-funded initiatives were such: downtown parking garage line item, $2,545. Miscellaneous project number 1 line item of $6,960 is for Welsh Comer's work on the Tilford Lane project. And miscellaneous project number 2 line item was $15,473, includes the Welsh Comer work on the North Park Drive initiative, plus the cost of the North Park Drive sign for marketing. All other P&L expenditures line items were normal for the operating for the month. The River District, the balance sheet, River District experienced $357,592 increase in cash assets from December month end. Taxes receivable increase of $11,364, which was an audit adjustment. No other changes from December values. And the liabilities and fund balance due to the Lake District, $29,870 was an audit adjustment, which we talked about on the Lake District balance sheet. In the River District P&L, the River District received $650,619 in tax increment revenue from the county in January. Agency-funded program line item reflects a $279,235 payment made to the Celtics Way project. All other P&L expenditures were normal for the month. So that's the financial report. Moving on to the payables. Thank you. You're getting smaller print every day. I had to bring my glasses. It's like, oh my God. Okay.
Something does look smaller.
Well, we got a lot of big numbers, so I guess Tony wants them in small print so we can't see them as well. Starting out with Elam and Burke, we have a total of $655 in Elam and Burke. $355 was for legislative issues and general counsel, and $300 was for the Atlas Mill Site Initiative. Moving on down, Holly Troxel, total of $4,368, of which $1,294 was legislative issues and general legal counsel. $2,732 was for the Park Drive Initiative, right-of-way surplus, all the things we just went through. And then $342 for the Atlas Mill Initiative. We have a $12,000 bill to pay to Fish Plumbing and Drain, which was a corrective action on the 301 East Lakeside building. We had a plumbing issue there we had to take care of. So that's $12,000. And then here are a lot of semi-annual payments. We each February and August, we make a number of large payments on a number of our projects we've had funded. The Chamber DDA, all principal, $1,193.36. The Ice Plant IRA, all principal, $25,715.78. The 609 Sherman Avenue Lofts IRA, all principal, $16,687.95. The Riverstone West 1 OPA, all principal, once again, $183,248.41. The Riverstone West Phase 2 IRA, total of $47,483.36. A breakout of that was interest of $19,120 and principal of $28,363.36. The Mill River Seniors Apartments IRA, all interest, $5,836.69. The Riverstone West Apartments IRA, once again, all interest, $6,683.27. Riverstone West 3 IRA, all interest, $3,558.94. The Circuit at Celtics IRA, $9,111.99 total, broken out, interest of $5,612.28, and principal at $3,499.72. The Washington Trust Lake District Bond 2016 Series February 1st, 2018 payment, interest of $45,032.82, principal of $862,169.25 for a total payment of $907,202.07. And the Washington Trust Bank Lake District Bond 2017 Series, the February 1st, 18 payment of $927 in interest and zero principal for $927.66 total. And the Coeur d'Alene Downtown Association event contract, first payment of 2018, $12,500. Those all total up to $1,220,149.48.
Ask a question just
Yes.
real quick. The Coeur d'Alene Downtown Association, it says the first FY18 payment. How many payments are there?
Two.
Two? Okay. Thank you.
The next payment was to the Performing Arts Center feasibility study, the HVS consulting contract. The total contract is for $62,750. This payment is for $8,925. We do have some payments starting to come out now for the downtown parking structure. $2,250 to Miller Stauffer for the design, and $802,797.50 to contractor T. Riviere Equipment and Excavation, for a total of $805,047.50. Add those all up, total payments for this month are $2,051,144.98. That are the
That
payables.
was amount.
Well done.
Thank you. A lot of money to go out. So I'd like to have a motion for approving the financials and payables.
So moved.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? After that wonderful narrative, thank you. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks.
And moving on down, a little discussion on a project that we actually talked about funding back on October 19th of 2016. Is the Collaborate project, which is out on Northwest Boulevard. It's going to be, it was projected to be a Fairfield Inn and Suites, which is a Marriott project. This has now been inactive for, well, it's a year and a half. And I just saw an article in today's paper where it looks like their building permit actually comes up for, it expires on the end of June, is that correct? So we talked about this in finance, that this is an obligation that we have as a board. And we need to, you know, we have basically on the books right now as the board. So if this partnership goes into reality and they actually build, we will have a commitment of, I'm trying to remember the amount we agreed to.
$680,000.
I was going to say 600 and some thousand. So that's a liability that we have of 680,000. When we talked about it in finance, it was kind of like, maybe we should bring it up in front of the board just to talk about it because it's been on the books for a long time. The district, it'll be in the Lake District, and the Lake District obviously ends in 3 years. So I'm just throwing it out for discussion. I mean, my recommendation, if I could make one, it would be is that their building permit expires in June. I think we just hold off doing anything until, you know, see what happens between now and their building permit expiration, and then maybe in August, or excuse me, July, June or July, whenever it expires, we readdress this situation. So,
Comment? Dialogue?
Has there been any input from the owner of the property? I mean, why is it stalled? Do we know?
Well,
why?
we swapped voicemails, and basically he said he ran into financing challenges. Some of his financing involves tax credits, federal tax credits, and that kind of got into a little bit of a mix-up with the Obama administration and Trump administration, and that's finally getting some clarity, so he's a little more comfortable on the financing part. And then he had a problem with his contractor that went into receivership, so now he's shopping for a new contractor. So he's optimistic that he can break ground April, May, and get after it, and so we'll see.
I think what Mick is saying is reasonable, though, giving them until the permit expires.
The one thing is, I mean, at this amount of money, in the short duration of the district, it's gonna be fairly difficult to get that much paid back to the contract, or to the developer anyway, so it's starting to get pretty squeezed on time. I mean, even if he breaks ground here real soon, you gotta figure it's gonna be 2019 before you start seeing any
Revenue.
Increment.
Yeah.
Steve?
I was just gonna say, I supported Mick's recommendation to wait until June and see what happens and then make a decision in July. I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, I agree.
Our liability isn't technically that high anymore, is it, because of the shorter life of the district? It's maybe that high on the books, but it's not really
Right.
that high.
It really depends on what product comes out of the ground and what is assessed at. I mean,
Yeah.
if he builds a $50 or $60 million project, then it's one answer. If he builds a $10 million project, it's another answer. So he would have to build a very expensive project to get it fully assessed and get $680,000 back through tax increment by 2021.
Right, right,
So you're right, I mean, it's not that much in reality, but it's still a liability on the books.
right.
Okay.
I guess we'll see soon whether it's gonna sink or swim.
Then I guess that topic's done. Commissioner Jordan, can you talk about parking, please?
Nothing in to report, Mr. Chairman, on the City Parking Commission, on the parking structure. If you've driven by, you've noticed it's underway, and, we were having this gorgeous early spring weather, then the cold wave hit and shot frost down into the ground, so they are still working. It's a lot slower, but they're working and they're pouring footings. They got concrete blankets over the footings, so it's progressing. It'll probably start really ramping up when the weather breaks here in the next several weeks. But the lines are relocated, and things are moving along. Fortunately, didn't hit anything they didn't expect when they dug the basement out in it, so we were kind of crossing our fingers on that, but that turned out okay.
Perfect.
So we're looking pretty good.
Good. Thank you. Executive Director's Report.
Mr. Chairman,
Burns.
quite a few topics to discuss. The first one is the Midtown Ad Hoc Committee discussion. I'll turn that over to Commissioner Garcia to kind of chat about where the Ad Hoc Committee is at this time.
Okay, so the ad hoc committee did meet. The ad hoc committee is Mayor Widmeyer, Commissioner Metz, and myself. Also joining us at the meeting that we held was the city planning director, Anderson. Hillary Anderson. So our goal was just to talk about some of the options that we would have for Midtown, not to make recommendations, but merely to have discussion and share our discussion with the rest of the board. We really focused on basically the four ideas that we had talked about at the last boarding meeting, which were sell the property, give the property to the city, redo the RFP, or do nothing. Those were essentially the four that we discussed at the last board meeting. So the group talked about selling it, and from a selling it standpoint, we kind of have a plus and a minus, one each on that we came up with for the board to think about. One would be is if we were to sell it, it would provide cash flow into the district to assist with other projects that we may want to be working on. The con, I guess, if you're talking pros and cons, would be concerns about who or what might go into that space, and that there would be no control whatsoever. It could be, who knows what, it could be a parking lot or a used car dealership or something very positive. It's just we wouldn't have any control over that. No one really would. We talked about the possibility of giving it to the city. It doesn't sound as if the city wants the property and has the ability to do anything with the property. So that one kind of, the discussion didn't go beyond that for that option. There was the option to do nothing, which was not appealing to the ad hoc group. It just said it would essentially leave the asset idle and forego the opportunity to make changes for the Midtown community, which is not appealing at all to us. So the one discussion that got the most traction with this group at the time was a discussion about going through the RFP process again. understanding that it's late in the timeframe of the district, but initially, we were trying to solve the problem and come up with the solution, and we had to back off, obviously, because was not our goal. Our goal was merely to chat. We did have concerns about negatively impacting parking and the idea of whether to focus on the evening activity that already exists in Midtown or to focus on the daytime activities. And essentially that evolved into the discussion among the group of that's something that we would need help deciding, basically. That we thought what we would suggest, or we discussed, was that we could do a more focused and more targeted conversation about the RFP and potentially invite some developers and the community to go into a room together and talk about what the possibilities are, kind of prime the pump from a developer standpoint, but have the community in Midtown involved in the discussion. And that we could look at engaging the community in more than just a one-time, one-night event, that we could maybe figure out some ways to do something through a website or some other way to get input or ideas from both developers and the community. So we did not talk about what we would do if the second RFP failed like the first one did. And like I said, we do have concern about the timing of the RFP and getting construction done before the term of the district expired. So that was what our discussion was about. I don't know if Commissioner Widmeyer or Commissioner Metz wants to add anything to my quick and dirty summary of our conversation.
I guess when we talked about possibly doing another RFP, that we put some more specifics in it. Maybe we wanted to engage someone to do some conceptual drawings of what could possibly go there, to put in front of the stakeholders and developers of kind of an idea of what we're looking for in that area. Because when we set it up, and we did this on purpose, when we set out the first one, it was just, okay, development community, give us all of your ideas on what you think could be done with this property. We didn't get any. So maybe we have to just generate something conceptually that, okay, maybe this is something that we could look at. And then we could bring in the development community and bring in the stakeholders and the neighbors to give 2 or 3 or 4 options of what could possibly be there.
There was a conceptual drawing once that I believe the Midtown was happy with when it was a condominium. So we have something to start with, if that's how you'd like to proceed.
Yeah. I think, and Brad would know this better than I would, but there's still some real challenges with condominium building now that there didn't used to be. They've changed it. There's some liability issues, there's some financing issues. So I don't know what the appetite for any developer right now is to do condominiums.
I think condominiums are viable, but you're right. When the recession hit, I mean, so many lenders took a horrendous hit with condominium projects that imploded. It's tough to finance them now. Some places it's okay. I mean, they're going like gangbusters in Seattle, but we don't seem to have the track record in Coeur d'Alene for condos, so they're a little bit tougher here. But I don't know how viable a condo project would be to finance in Midtown right now. I've tried to think of something there. I was thinking of a farmer's market. I saw one in Missoula, and I talked to the planning and zoning people to see if anyone had experience in their travels around the country with how a farmer's market could be enclosed farmer's market could be economically viable there, but nobody really could come up with anything. But there's a lot of cool things that could happen there, but how to make something financially viable, I don't know. We tried some wide open RFPs like you talked about back earlier in the 2000s, and both times we got several responses, and each time, unfortunately, after we picked a winner, then a few months down the road or a year down the road, they couldn't make it pencil and backed out of it, so they never took off. And then we were put in touch with the Idaho housing people that wanted to do a project in Coeur d'Alene, and then the rest is history there. So I was kind of surprised the last RFP didn't work, so I kind of laid an egg on that one because I was a big proponent of that one, and I thought maybe we'd get a couple of applications, but I don't see anything wrong with trying it again. You know, we can always try a different angle on it.
I think one of the things we were thinking is trying to get the stakeholders and some developers in the room together to converse directly with each other and kind of, well, we kind of like this idea, well, we're not sure that would work. How about this idea? We don't like that idea. You know, do a little back and forth and maybe come up, I don't know, maybe I live on a rainbow, but, you know, maybe that there's a way to have a conversation and allow that dialogue to happen a little more naturally. And if there's interest from the stakeholders and interest from a developer, maybe we could get something to come through. It's a great spot. It's a great part of town. It deserves something appropriate. It's just, we're having a hard time figuring out what that is.
There is a lot of positive energy in Midtown now. Things are changing around.
Mick?
As far as the disposition price, we can, now that we've been through the RFP process, we can set whatever price we choose. Well,
We can reduce, now that
It's one of
we've
those lawyer answers.
declared it surplus, and we can,
We didn't declare it surplus,
Oh,
so
we
that's
haven't
it,
done that
we're working under a different statutory, program here. So the RFP process, we went out and said, you know, we're seeking proposals for a project
Okay.
that's gonna invigorate the area, and, you know, depending on what you propose, we would sell it to you at that fair reuse appraisal price. But that really depends on what the project is, right? Because basically, fair reuse appraisal is what the developer needs to make the project that we select, based on its quality, pencil.
okay.
So we didn't receive any qualifying responses to that. So I think we would have to go through that process again if we want to go through another RFP. The other option is to go with a surplus property sale, but then you just turn it over to the market. You get an appraisal, you turn it over to the
Right.
market, just like we did today.
Well, what I'm thinking is, if there is a developer out there that, you know, could make this pencil at a less expensive price than what we actually have it appraised at, maybe that's a starting point too. It seems like that's been a sticking point, is that, you know, the housing agency owns that block on the end, or that lot on the end, and we own the stuff in the middle. Could we figure out a way to get the price somewhat reasonable to start a better dialogue for a developer?
Well, that is part of the consideration for a developer with this RFP process, is that we do sell it to them at fair reuse appraisal. So
Fair
we
reuse appraisal.
which could be less than.
Which could be, I mean, it could be zero.
Okay.
But you have to pick the project first.
You have to pick the
okay.
project, yeah.
The two times we did it before, we were giving them a really good deal on the land, and we had two they were specific projects that we chose among several entries, but then, like I said, they ran into trouble and couldn't make it pencil, and both of them backed out. But personally, I give somebody a killer deal on the land if they had a really good project that was good for Midtown and contributed increment, but, you know, it doesn't quite work to say we're gonna sit on it for 2 or 3 years and see what we can come up with, so that we didn't really have a viable application last time.
To get to that point, though, we have to go back to the RFP process.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we go back to the RFP process, following the ad hoc committee's recommendation here.
Conversation. We didn't make a recommendation, but it was our conversation.
Discussion. Heck, no recommendation. Go back to the RFP process. I'm trying to think of a way we could structure it so that it gives more flexibility. This last time, it seemed like it was somewhat disjointed when we got the bids, or the one proposal.
If I might, it sounds like you might want to have this ad hoc committee do this work first before you issue another RFP to kind of refine what you're looking for. I mean, if you do get these people together, stakeholders and the developers, you know, they might help shape what you really want to see, and which
Okay,
would
that's fine.
make it clear.
Would the board consider giving the ad hoc committee a small budget to have some conceptual stuff drawn up, so we could bring that back to the board?
Sure.
I think we really need to have something that's down on paper, and we could work with someone and just kind of tell them what the idea is. And we talked about what the next step is to bring in developers and neighbors and things like that, it's possible that we could have that meeting, the three of us, get some ideas, and then select someone to do some fairly inexpensive, just conceptuals. And from there, we can bring those, if it's 2 or 3 or 4 different conceptual ideas, bring that back to the board. The board can massage those and come up with something that would fit in that RFP.
Sure.
I think the ad hoc group got kind of excited about the possibility of redoing the RFP and was ready to jump to action that afternoon. And I had to be the wet blanket and slow it down and say, we need to take this back to the board, ask for their direction on how to go forward, and then start trying to go forward with some of these ideas. So I guess if it's appropriate, we would ask for the approval of the board to move forward with trying to figure out how to construct a more productive RFP process. Is that
part of your motion?
Yes, it is.
Includes a little
How much?
money or?
Stipend for
How
Mr.
much money do you need, 5,000 or?
Oh, wait,
Idea?
Olivia has some.
I would actually recommend that we wait on the conceptuals, just because it seems like it's putting the
Cart before the horse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and almost getting the feel for what the group is kind of guiding towards. And then we could put together some conceptuals and have another meeting with them and kind of hash out some more.
Feels like if we do the conceptuals before we have a meeting, then we
Yeah.
haven't taken into consideration the discussion at the meetings.
Well, I would suggest having those meetings before we move forward with the,
Okay.
I think
With
we
the
could, maybe we
conceptuals.
could,
Okay.
with the board's approval, have a meeting with the neighbors and stakeholders and interested parties, get the ideas, bring that back. Maybe we can get an idea of what those conceptual drawings would be, and then at our next meeting, we can decide what those conceptuals would consist of.
I think that's a good idea.
Get all that?
So what's your time frame?
Well, we would meet within the next month, between now and our next board meeting, with stakeholders and the neighbors, get their thoughts and ideas, bring those thoughts and ideas back, and then this board would massage those ideas to come up with some conceptuals. From there, take it back. I don't know what the time frame would be, just to get some.
Are you going to have developers in that same conversation? I mean, sometimes it's easy to go out and get all kinds of great ideas,
We
but
would
if they're
have
not
developers.
viable, then it's kind of back to where we started from.
Yeah,
That
no,
was the
I think
idea.
it would be a combination, that whatever meeting we have, we'd have the developers, designers, and the neighbors and stakeholders involved.
That was the intent.
Yeah, that was the
Good,
intent.
good.
Yeah, so that we wouldn't be off track.
So I agree with everybody, and I think this ad hoc committee can move a lot faster and more freely than this whole group can. So I think there's a lot of reason to have the ad hoc committee do the research and meet with the stakeholders in the neighborhood. I don't care. I mean, I would support appropriating a little bit of money for them to work with in case there's some kind of expenses. It may not be conceptions, but
Refreshments.
maybe a little bit. Well,
Refreshments for a
whatever,
meeting.
maybe
Yeah,
they gotta,
absolutely.
maybe there's some kind of, something they need we can't think of right now, but just so that they don't have to be held up, some kind of a small amount of money, so they have a little budget to work with. Maybe they won't use it, but maybe they need it, they'll have access to it. I don't know what that number would be, but I just want to arm them with all the tools that they need so they can, work as efficiently as they can on this.
I think we could probably come back with a number at our next board
Okay.
meeting for approval.
All right.
We won't spend any of your money between now and then.
Okay. I was trying to plug some more into the lots to help cover you on your ad hoc committee.
When, in terms of like the neighborhood or whoever, who is representing Midtown, is there a formal group, or like when I, growing up here and everything, when I hear Midtown, I've got kind of a geographic area that I realize isn't everybody else's geographic area, so are we worried about how we define who gives input for Midtown, or is it just anybody who feels they're part of Midtown?
I think it's anyone that feels like they're part of Midtown, I guess.
But really, anybody that even visits Midtown, right? I mean,
Okay.
we could get input from anyone. Obviously, the people that are there and live there are going to be very interested in having their opinions known. But I think everyone is welcome to
Part
come
of the
in
whole
and give
town,
their.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Midtown's part of the whole city, just like the downtown.
Yeah.
And so anyone that has an interest in Midtown
Okay.
should have input. Maybe they have some good ideas.
Is that, is there a second for that motion?
Is there a
I'll second it.
necessary to have a
If there's
motion?
a second,
or
I'll
I guess
second it.
to
Do we need a motion if the existing ad hoc committee just going to bring
Yeah,
back
it doesn't really
some
seem
more
like there's
discussion?
Direction.
But aren't we making recommendations of how to move forward? Does that make a difference?
There's not really any action being taken other than you guys continuing with your process as
Yeah.
a ad hoc committee.
Okay,
If you were gonna spend money or,
okay.
I think that'd be different.
Just checking. I don't want to, go outside my boundaries. Stay in my box.
So no motion needed?
We'll just wait till next month,
Okay.
excitedly.
We will have a new report next month.
Next item on the executive director's brief.
Okay. Atlas Mill Site Planning Project. Just to kind of give everybody a little background, I'd like to invite Phil Boyd with Welch Comer Engineers to kind of walk you through a presentation that he gave at City Council last night to kind of shape the conversation. This agenda item.
Thank you, Tony, Chairman Hoskins, Commissioners, and just a correction, Troy gave this last night.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. My
And he was here,
apologies.
but he stepped out, I think, to
Oh,
take a phone call. And I offered for him to do this presentation tonight, but he offered me to do the presentation, so I'm doing the presentation. So what I'm going to talk about tonight are some opportunities that have come up. They were actually identified during the summer 2017 due diligence process. As you know, the board stepped away from the project for a while. You're back into it. And so these opportunities have been simmering out there. And as I had told Tony and Troy, I thought it was important to at least advance them forward to make sure that the decision makers had the opportunity to say, it's interesting, we're not interested, or it's interesting, we'd like to move forward. Last night at City Council, Troy presented this, and they elected to fund these improvements through the city, and I'll walk through what they are. So there's three parts to it: structural soil import, shoreline stabilization permitting, which is a very long lead item for those of you folks that are familiar with that, and a site evaluation to characterize the soils that are out there. So, as I mentioned in 2017, when we were doing the original due diligence, it became apparent that there was a need for import soil on the project. There's a considerable cost to that. The rough numbers at the time we got were somewhere between $14 to $16 a yard if you're trying to bring that material in. So it's $1.6 million on the high side. Currently, ITD has a contract out where they're lowering Interstate 90. That fill material became available. As you guys know, we talked about this before, and we can acquire that material for $420,000. There's a bunch of additional work that goes along with that, so the total cost of the project would be $495,000. In that increment between 420 and 495 is the amount that the board was reticent to fund last month, and there was just the environmental portion that was funded last month. So that's where that $75,000 is in there. So the city has elected to move forward and fund that portion of the work. So the savings to the city is $1,105,000. The project could start in April. And as I mentioned here, the city's already, or Ignite's already started the environmental work. And you guys have seen these slides before, so I won't spend too much time on them. That's the topography, that's the area that would be funded. And so the city council looked at this last night and elected to fund it. The other component of the project is the shoreline stabilization. The shoreline needs to be stabilized. As you can see, there's portions of it here that are eroding. This is at low water, so it looks like the water's down here, but it's actually the high water, ordinary high water mark is up here. And here's another image of it. You can see how the shoreline's eroding there. We could all debate about what that's caused by, but the proliferation of surf boats is part of the problem. So in order to stabilize that bank, there's quite a permitting process that goes through that. So one idea is to start that permitting process now, because as you move, it can take up to a year to get that done. Then whatever happens in 2019, whether it's the property is sold, those permits are in place and could be used by a future developer, the city, whomever is part of that project at the time. And these are some ideas that we would propose using on the concepts. You're probably accustomed to seeing that. This is actually out at Higgins Point, a project we did a few years ago. This is over at Blackwell Island, a project we did. This one at Blackwell Island is a little more sensitive because it's got willows planted in it to create shade in the water. This is probably more appropriate along the river if there's an opportunity. This is a project that's up on the Coeur d'Alene River, and this is a project that's actually up in Canada. And you can see that there's all types of shoreline stabilization, but the objective of this phase of work would be to simply develop the concepts, do a sufficient amount of work to make the applications to the agencies and get the ball moving forward, and then to also pursue some grant opportunities that might be available through a couple of different funding sources that Steve Gill at IDEQ has informed us about and is excited about and thinks that this is a very viable project. But you need some content. As you were talking about Midtown, you need some content to provide to the funding agencies and to the grant or the environmental entities, the permitting agencies like the Corps of Engineers and Department of Lands. So the cost for that, concepts and whatnot, are $35,000, and the city elected to fund those as well. The last part is the soils evaluation. I'm not sure why these are bleeding. Partnership with DEQ. DEQ is planning to do an evaluation of the site, and they're going to go out there and conduct borings. As we became aware of that, and Steve Gill again was kind of mentioning that to us, we kind of ran there and said, well, what are you going to do with the material that comes out of the hole when you're doing the borings? Well, they're going to take a very small sample of it and throw the rest of it away. Well, the rest of it, is meaningful to people that want to purchase that site, remediate the site. And so we said, well, how about if we piggyback with you and we bring our own geotech in to partner with you and do a bunch of the analytical work associated with that, including quantifying how much is there, what are the options for disposing of it, and that entire analysis. And you can see here, this is the image of where we would do some of the borings that would be useful to us on the project. The red ones are borings, and the yellow ones are test pits. So the difference between a bore and a test pit is a test pit might go down 15 feet, and a bore will go down 75, 100 feet. In this particular area over here at Mount Hink, the area beneath, let's say, the Southeast Way elevation is what we're most interested in, because the number that we've currently quantified is based on 2 data points. And you can imagine trying to estimate earthwork on 2 data points. And so the objective here is to collect more data points, get a more accurate number, and again, the more we know about the site, the better Tony's financial models can be, the more we can tell potential future developers. We'll also characterize the material. So what can we use that material for? Maybe it has a structural component to it. Maybe we don't need to use piles there and we can use larger spread footings. So there's lots of analytical work that will come out of this. And again, it's a transferable product. So the next person that comes along, you can take and hand them that report, and it adds value to the property. So the city considered this as well and elected to fund it. We estimate that this will save, if you were to go do this project as a standalone, it'd be about an $85,000 geotech evaluation. And by piggybacking, the city's probably saving about $50,000. So the reason it's in front of the board tonight is because you have an engineer who's currently working on the project, and the city says, can't we just hand the engineering work to Ignite and have them advance the ball? And Tony might have additional detail on that. The city intends to contract directly with the contractor on the ITD project to do the earthwork part of it. So that's kind of the quick summary of it.
So the overture to the board is that the city would like to engage the agency to partner with them. They would forward $155,000 to the agency to work with our Welsh Comer contract to get the engineering done associated with the I-90 materials, as well as the other elements that Phil laid out for stabilization and what was the other one, Phil?
The shoreline stabilization, the geotech investigation, yeah, and the I-90.
So those three items equals $155,000. So the city would be contracting with the I-90 contractor for $420,000.
Correct.
So if the board would agree to that, then the next issue would be that we would develop a funding agreement between Ignite CD and the city in order to allow those funds to transfer to the agency for work on the Atlas Mill site.
Just a quick question. What is the closing date on the site?
It's like the middle to third week in May.
So we're going to do substantial amount of earthwork before they close, is that correct?
We may close it in April. We've had initial conversations with the owner that she's okay with some material going on the site, but we'll make a decision as to if we're going to close it at the time or we're going to close it at the same date that we have scheduled.
I was just curious if there's any liability, considering it's not in a district. Is there any liability on the agency, considering?
Liability created by we're not doing the construction part.
Right, it's just funding.
No, I don't.
Not funding, but it's because we have an engineering services.
We're not using any of our own funds.
Right,
Right.
we have the contract with Welchcomer on this site, and so we're just allowing the city to utilize that contract basically to fund these specific projects. When we do those agreements, we do require them to indemnify us for anything that comes up related to those contracts, so that would be included. Would you be named in a suit if something happened? Probably, but I mean, I can't really, it's hard to imagine a suit related to these engineering type services.
Okay.
Creating liability.
But this is not a district.
Right.
But we do have statutory authority to work with the city on planning for areas that we think are going to potentially become a district.
Okay.
So that's why we're able to contract with Welchcomer on this site at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Brad?
I have a quick question on the shoreline stabilization you're working on. So legally, do you have the ability to do some recontouring and make some of the shoreline where it's practical more horizontal, where there could be some beach access and improve that, or does it have to stay kind of vertical with riprap and willows and that sort of thing?
Are you, I think you're stealing some of my future thunder.
Oh, all right.
The answer to that is yes. There's obviously a contamination component to it because of the historic flooding, and you can imagine the solids depositions, which is part of what the geotech that I showed you, the boring of. But that is part of the evaluation going through that corridor. Is everything appropriate to be very vertical, or are there opportunities to lay the shoreline back, put a certain type of material and attenuate the wave action, like you would, for instance, on a ski lake. If you're familiar with ski lakes, you design the shoreline to attenuate waves through there. So yes, that's a long answer to yes.
Okay, that's great. I think people would like that.
Yep, no, we've been with the city's planning team, with Hillary and her group. It's been a consideration for all of us.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Phil, if you could go back to that one slide of the borings, B-O-A-R. Is that what the boring is, or is it the boring?
It's B-O-R-E.
Oh, So what do we expect to find out, or what information are you looking to get out of that boring?
So the red ones are the boring, and the yellow ones are test pits. And so out of the combination, there's two primary objectives. The first objective is extent. So how far and wide, depth and breadth is the unsuitable material? So that's the first one, because that helps us quantify the material. And then the second one is the characterization of the material. So as we pull the stuff out, is it 99.99% bark and 1% rock? Or is it 60-40? And what is that composition? Because what that will allow us to do is provide some bearing values, foundation bearing values for future buildings, or not. And so that's really been an unknown, because Mayor Woodmeyer's been involved with this as long as you have. You know, that's one of the questions we've all been asking. What can we put here? What can we put here? Well, we don't know what the soil bearing capacity is, so we don't know. So this will help answer that question. So now, when a a person comes in and says, well, we want to build a 6-story building there, well, that's a problem. But you want to build a 1-story building there, make your spread footing slightly larger, and here's the geotech report that indicates your allowable bearing pressures on it. So it's that type of analytical data that we're trying to get out of the batch up here. And then down on the shoreline, it's similar but a little bit different, if you want me to get into that.
And previously, there had been some work done on there, but not to the extent that you're looking to do now, when we've basically been speculating that that whole area is unsuitable to build on.
Correct.
So we don't have any hard and fast data today that says that. We could be surprised at what those boring results are.
Correct. And there's one really good data point in here. There's one bore location here, and I think there was one more in this area, but it's just not significant. If you can just imagine, we've estimated a cone of material because we had one data point. And so we estimated that this much was unsuitable. Well, if we were at the deepest part, or were we at the shallowest part, and does it go wider? Those are the details that this will help us. And those boring locations are a little bit approximate at this point. We still want to shift them around a little bit because we're pulling in, it's a long story, but we're pulling in historic photographs and essentially using the historic photographs to help us land the boring locations.
And importing that soil is not going to affect what we term as Mount Hink right now. That Mount Hink is going to remain the same, but that soil will come down below, so in that blue.
Correct, and that's a good point. The reason that this blue area was selected for the import location was it was previously stripped, which is where a lot of Mount Hink came from. And so, but it was stripped so long ago that there's actually been organic material that has started to take over. So now there's a new organic layer on there. It's not an organic layer that's 2 feet thick, but there's a layer in there that needs to be stripped. So a portion of that $420,000 will result in stripping that material, stockpiling it on site, because we actually may have a use for it on site. And so there's no point in hauling it away. And then placing the structural fill in here. There's also erosion control measures that we're putting in that will probably just stay in place because there's no point in putting those in, paying for that, and then ripping them back out if someone else is just going to come in the next year or two.
Thank you.
What's the probability of, I mean, you'll find this out for sure on Mount Hink, of any of that material being useful for fill on the project that we have now? Is there any possibility that?
In the open space, it could be. There's some low spots. I don't know if I have a picture of it. You can see this low spot. Here's the railroad grade, and you can see that low spot through there. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's an opportunity of it. There's there's multiple criteria, but the two primary criteria are there contamination in it, and will it not settle? And we can do things like put it in there and preload it. But the objective would be to not move this from within a mile of here. That's kind of the objective that Tony and I had talked about early last year when we were looking at the financial models. Is there a way we can take that material, pick it up, and move it within a mile? And as you know, the city has the BLM corridor, the railroad corridor heads out onto the prairie. So there's opportunities. There's potentially some sites up on Ramsey Road. That would be the objective. Start here first, see if we can use it, and then try to keep it within a short haul. Sure. And using articulated trucks, which are off-road vehicles. So you can, haul large quantities with one truck driver.
Mm-hmm. So you'll be doing this with the DEQ. They'll be searching for environmental concerns, and you'll be searching for engineering opportunities.
Yep. And I think you guys have known, because you've seen Steve Gill up, I think, before, and he's been part of the presentation, and he's been fantastic to work with, as well as his team, John Welsh from Tetra Tech, but very collaborative and really, there's a lot, we keep saying, Tony and I keep talking about the moving parts on here, and there's so many moving parts on this, but there's a tremendous amount of positive energy from all the folks that are working on it.
So you need a motion then?
I need 2 motions, and I took the liberty of drafting them. So let me share those with you and see if they meet your needs. So the first one is a motion agreeing to modify the existing Welch-Comer Atlas Mill Site contract in the amount of $155,000 with said funds to be provided by the City of Coeur d'Alene to incorporate necessary engineering and planning services pertaining to the Atlas Mill site area. So that would be the first one.
I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion?
Oh, Mick's had some good motions tonight.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries.
Second motion would be regarding the cooperative funding agreement. So a motion authorizing the creation of a cooperative funding agreement between Ignite CDA and the City of Coeur d'Alene in the amount of $155,000 pertaining to engineering and planning services to be provided by Welch-Comer engineers on the Atlas Mill site.
I like that motion.
I'll second it.
Just a point here, that's $150,000 funded by the city.
Correct, City of Coeur d'Alene.
155.
155.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries too. Thank you. Bill?
Just a couple more updates on projects that we have in the works. So the Performing Arts Center feasibility study, as we shared, HVS Consulting has been engaged by CA 2030. That contract has been executed in the amount of $62,750, which includes a travel expense of $6,000 and an optional donor survey cost of $7,500. The HVS contract begins on February 26 and will take 12 weeks to complete. So that project is moving forward. The Atlas Mill Site Planning Project, the first milestone element of the planning effort was conducted on February 7th, which was a community input session spearheaded by Coeur d'Alene 2030 and the City of Coeur d'Alene. The Welch-Comer planning team is taking the input generated from that planning or that session into their planning efforts at this time. So that project is moving forward. Memorial Park project update. Things are kind of slow out there right now. You are seeing some electrical work being done. There's some signalization being put in, getting ready for the spring activation. There's a little bit of work going on shaping the berm. The skate park project is moving forward. They plan to break ground in May and complete that in July. So that, and remember, the board is funding $350,000 of that $400,000 initiative. And on a related topic to Memorial Park, the city has selected Architects West as the architect for the Memorial Field Grandstand Rehabilitation Initiative. Construction is scheduled to start in June with completion in December. So that rehab will happen this year.
Good.
Southeast Way Road revitalization, nothing really new to update you. Everything is kind of winterized right now. All lanes are working, and they'll get after finishing up the resurfacing and landscaping as spring rolls around. The railroad right-of-way surplus project sale, or property sale, we're continuing to work with Active West on that sale. We've had some great strides working with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality on our area regarding potential contamination. It looks like we might not have to do any site work out there at all. That will be decided within 2 weeks. There's been some change in the EPA rules about what is good and what is not good, which is a benefit to us. So the contractors are working through the Department of Environmental Quality to ascertain that. We're optimistic that we won't need to move any materials. The developer, Active West, is aware of that, and they're pursuing closing activities with Union Pacific. Ignite at Riverstone, this is formerly referred to as Tilford Lane. We're still working on options out there, giving a lot of moving parts regarding Tilford Lane itself, the Bell Reef Homeowners Association trying to figure out different access points to try to make this potential trade with the city of Coeur d'Alene work. As you recall, we're looking to trade our Young Avenue property at the base of Tubbs Hill for city-owned property out off of Tilford Lane to kind of make this all make sense for the agency. So we're still working on that. And finally, the North Idaho Collaborative Education facility called the NICE project. Bid opening for the project, which is estimated in the $8 million range, is planned for February 27th. If an acceptable bid is received, the contractor will most likely begin work in mid-April. Ignite CDA is contributing $2.5 million to this initiative and will work with the State of Idaho Department of Public Works, which is a contracting entity on a project funding arrangement. So Danielle and I are working towards that. We'll gen up an agreement between Ignite and DPW to transfer our funding to them as construction commences. So it's getting off the ground. They had a pre-bid meeting last week, had a lot of interest. Hopefully they get some good bids. I don't know if, Sarah, if you have any other insights on that? But
Not yet.
Not yet?
Well, on February 27th.
You're optimistic.
Good. Nice.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I think that was a lot. It's time for board commissioner comments.
I'll have to say, I was driving Celtics Way this morning on my way to work, and people are finally getting the hang of the roundabouts, and you can see that it's making a very definitive difference in the traffic flow down there, even.
They do enter it pretty cautiously, too, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
better
Well,
than.
at least people have stopped stopping
Yeah.
in the middle of the roundabout. I appreciate that.
Good. It'll be great when that's done.
Yeah,
Get the
it's
landscaping and
exciting
stuff
to
done and
see.
the trails in. Thanks. It's time for public comment. Any public comment? Please come forward, state your name, please, and need a chair to sit on there. Looks like you're hurting.
Formerly a Midtown resident for 22 years. I'm a few blocks over. Now I'm kind of a downtown resident. Listening to the discussion on Midtown. The four options, this, obviously, there are board members that have been here from the beginning of what has gone on in Midtown. Properties being purchased, concepts not penciling out. And I'm going to get to the point of the four options that this mini board came up with. Selling it, I'm not crazy about that, and letting it go willy-nilly on whoever can have it. I'm disappointed if truly my city doesn't want to take control of it and work with the community on it. And if that's the case, then I may need to run for city council and make this an issue and fight for it a little more. Doing nothing is I think out of the question for Midtown. There are plenty of folks that have spent money for their businesses, their restaurants, their homes, and to do nothing seems silly. So this RFP discussion, refining it, and having some meetings with store owners, restaurant owners, homeowners, just the people that drive through Midtown, I think is crucial to come up with something. And in hindsight is fantastic. This should have been done over 12 years ago, and it fell on deaf ears, and it was misdirected and misguided. And it's kind of where we're at today. We've spent a lot of money on a big chunk of property. We're stuck with the property being owned by Idaho Housing, which is unfortunate, but I would hope there's a way to make that go away and really use that property to its fullest. I mean, it can really be something. So I'm just putting it out there that we're more than, as Midtown residents, we are more than happy to sit down and figure this out and put it together. But I would hate that we're on a 3-year time limit. Just to do something to do it is not acceptable either. So, but night and weekends are open for me to sit down with whoever to push this thing. So, thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to clarify the city's position. The city's position was not that we didn't want anything to do with the property. The city's position was that at this time, having Ignite control that property gives a lot more flexibility and a lot more options to do something there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if nothing can be built there, the city would take it at the end of the period. So our position is that we didn't feel that it was a good idea at this time for the city to take control of the property because it really narrows the scope of what can be done there. So our position again was for the next 3 years and 10 months of the district, that the property was best to sit in the district because it provided more flexibility of what could be done.
I want to thank Steve Whitmire for being part of this board and didn't know the background on that, so thank you for clarifying. I'd much rather work with folks that I can vote for an office for a 2-year period that I can vote and say no to or yes to. I don't have that ability with this board. We have to work with who we have here. So yes, I'd much rather work, if things don't work out and we have to wait our time to work with the city, let's do it. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Any further public comment? Hearing none. I think I need a motion to enter executive session.
I will move to enter an executive session under Idaho Code Section 74-206, subsection 1C, to acquire an interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency. What do you think of that, Danielle? Just whipped right through that. Didn't need any help
That's good.
yet.
Roll call, please.
Goodlander?
Yes.
Etz?
Yes.
Norman?
Yes.
Whitmire?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chapkus?
Yes. We're in executive session.